Loves, welcome back to the channel. Today's tutorial will be on how to cut and draft this beautiful corset. Do subscribe and don't forget to give us a thumbs up. So guys, the first thing first I did was to mark my basic bodies. Okay, so let's go back to it. This is my starting line, which is serving as my shoulder, and I have 8 inches for my shoulder. And from this starting line, I marked 23 inches for the full length of my top. That's the upper part of this gown. All right, now the next thing is my chest line, which is at 8.5 inches. Reason because of this 1 inch slope we have here. Okay, so from here to here we have 7.5, which is your armhole measurement or armhole depth. To get yours, divide your bust by 6, add 1.5 inches to yours, you get yours. All right. Now the next stop is your bust line. Okay, so this is B, my bust line. Mine is at 10 inches. The next stop is my underbust, which is at 13 inches. The next step is my waistline, which is at 18 inches. That is my actual half length. Okay. And this is the hem of the top. Alright, so now the next thing to do is you're going to divide what you have at this your armhole area. This is 1 inch shoulder slope for your shoulder slope. Alright, so divide whatever you have here, get the midpoint. So this is my midpoint. From your midpoint, coming by 0.75 inches. That I've done here. So I'm going to connect it to my shoulder slope, which is here. This is what I have. Now, from this point, I'm going to be curving it into my chest line. And this is what we have. Alright, next stop is our neck width. So I'm going to be marking 3 inches, which is the normal neck width. I'm going to go ahead and connect it to the shoulder slope. And this is what I have. Okay, so next thing to do now is you're going to get your nipple to nipple measurement. That is your bust span measurement in between your two nipples. Alright, so I'm working with 4 inches for mine. Mark it on your bust line, mark it on your under bust, the half length, and on your hem, the hem of your dress, or the hem of your top. Having done this now, I'll connect the points together. And this is what we have. Alright, now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to divide our shoulder slope into 2 to get the midpoint. That is from here to here. And our midpoint is 2.5 inches. This is what I have. Now I'm going to be connecting from here to my bust line, which I have here. And this is what we have. Okay, next stop now is to determine where you, because this is going to be having a yoke and a net or a lace at the upper part of it. So determine where you want your lace to stop, starting from your shoulder line. So placing my tape at my shoulder measurements, my start point line, I'm going to determine where I want mine to be. Okay, so I'm going to be working between 6 to 7 inches. So I'll choose 6.5 inches is preferably for me. And this is what I have here. I'll go ahead and make a rule across what I have. So this line now, I'm going to label it as my over bust. So this is my over bust. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and go in with our dart intakes. Alright, so I'm going to come to my hemline and on my half length. I'm going to mark 0.75 inches on both sides. Note, you can decide to work with 1 inch, you can decide to work with half an inch, but for me, I'm going to be working with 0.75 inches. I'll also mark it at the under bust line. Now I'm going to connect them. And this is what we have. The next step now is we're going to be connecting these lines we have here from your under bust to your bust line. Now you're going to be leaving the curved part of your rule to do this. And this is what I have when I'm done with it. Okay, so now guys, the next thing to do is we're going to be tightening our over bust. We have already taken our dart intakes for the down part of our gown, the down part of the top. So now it's for this over bust to tighten it to avoid slacking. So what you have to do is come over here, mark 0.75 inches on both sides of this line. Okay, this I have. Now I'm going to connect it back to my bust line. So the next thing to do now is you're going to go in with your round body measurements. So my chest line, I'll go ahead and mark my bust measurement. Mine is 8.5. I'll mark it there. Come to my under bust. I'll also mark my under bust measurement. Please measure your yokes to be sure what you're doing. I'll come to my half length. I'll also mark my waistline measurement. And this is what I have. Now, if you want to snatch your waist, all you have to do is you remove 2 inches, 3 inches, 4 inches from your waist measurement, depending on how tight you want it to be snatched. Okay. So this is mine. Then on this hemline, I'm going to be imputing my hip measurement. So whatever you have as your hip measurement, that is what you're going to be placing here. So having done this now, the next thing I'm going to go ahead to do now is to place these measurements I removed, these measurements we have here, these dart intakes we used. Okay, so go ahead and add it back, plus stitching allowance to it. Having done this now, this is what I have. Then I'll connect them. So guys, this is what we have. Okay, so the next step now is we're going to divide what we have between our under bust and our bust line. All right, so divide the yokes into 2. So I have 3 inches. When I divide it, I'm going to be having 1.5 inches, and this is where it falls. Okay, the reason I'm doing this is I want to tighten my, I want to put in my bust dart. Okay, so starting from this bust, I'm going to go ahead and impute my bust dart now. And this is what I have. That is from the bust line I connected to these inches I have here to create my bust dart. Now the next thing we are going to do is we're going to go ahead with our dart manipulations. All right, so now the next thing to do is you're going to consider how deep you want your under your tulle or your net or your lace to be, starting from here, you're going to go ahead and mark it. Do you want it to be at the bust line? Do you want it to be at the chest line? Do you want it to go to the under bust? So wherever you want yours to be, go ahead and do that. So mine will going to be at my bust line, or few inches before my bust line. All right. So from here now, I'm going to go ahead and make a curve towards that area. And this is what I have. Okay. Having done this now, the next thing to do is I'm going to be connecting from here, this that intake we have here, to this point. Okay. To meet up with this curve we have here. So I'm going to use the curved part of my wool to do this. And this is what I have. Okay, so this is one part of my cup. This is what it looks like from this point. Now I connected it to this point, so one part of the cup is ready. Now we're going to be working on this part of the cup, but before then we have to close this ball. So now the next thing we're going to do is you're going to be closing up this buzz dart. Okay, so you can also go ahead and cut off this area, which is totally fine, but I'm not cutting it off because I want to make use of this paper. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and closing this dart. I'm going ahead to closing what we have at that area, and this is what it looks like. Okay, so now I'm going to be using my paper tape to hold it down. And this is what we have. So having done this now, the next thing I'm going to do now is, this is where my bust measurement is. From that point, I'm going to be coming up this way, like this, by 1.25 inches to 1.5 inches. I'm going to be using 1.25 inches, and this is where it is. This is what I have here. Okay, so from this point now, I'm going to be connecting it, making a curve into this other cup, the second cup. All right, so that's what I'm going ahead to do now. And this is what we have. Okay, so this is our second curve. Now the next thing to do is you're going to be making a curve from this point. Now we're going to be curving it into this point, that is the center we have here. And this is what we have. Okay, so this is what it looks like. What you have to do is go in, use your hand to blend it in proper. All right, so this is what we have. Now we are not yet done. Before cutting out this piece, we have to add back what we have here. Like we have removed 1.5 inches from this point. We're going to be adding it back to this armhole area to avoid shortage, because after joining your cup, this is going to shorten. All right, so we have to add this back to this place. So I'm going to be introducing a small paper here to retrace my armhole. Now we're going to be adding it back. Okay, so measure what you have here. We have 1.5 inches. I'm going to be adding 1 inch for stitching allowance. You can decide to use half an inch for stitching allowance. Okay, so we're going to be using half an inch for our stitching allowance. All right, so now I'm going to be placing it here, but it's going to be on a slant form. It's not going to just be straight. So I'm going to be placing it this way. Not really a slant form, kind of. Yeah. So this is what we have. Now we'll go ahead and retrace our armhole from that point. And this is what we have. Alright. So we're going to go ahead and cut this out. So cutting my armhole now, this is what I'm going to cut. I have to join this back at this point here. I didn't got it. So I'm going to tape it back. Just hold on a little. So guys, the next thing to note is the depth of your neck. Alright, so you go ahead and determine how deep you want your neck to be. Do you want it to be a turtleneck? Do you want it to come down? So I'm going to be leaving mine at around 5 to 5.5 inches. I have 5.5 inches here. So now I'm going to go ahead and connect it to this point, to my actual neck width. Alright, and this is what we have. Now we'll cut this out. Now there's one thing I want to add to what I'm doing. Alright, I'm going to be cutting this out, this area out, together with the main piece of our dress. Okay, so watch my please what I'm going to do. This is where our cup is. This is going to be entering. So this yoke is going to be on its own. Then this part is going to join with the main fabric. Apart from the cup, the center of our, that is the base of the blouse or the upper part of this corset. Yeah. Okay, so this is what it looks like. Yeah, you understand now. So now we're going to go ahead to cut this out. Please, another thing to kindly note is you're going to label your parts to avoid mistakes. Alright, so I'm going to label this as my side cup SC, and this one is my CC center cup. Okay, this is my centerpiece, and this is my side piece. Alright, so go ahead and cut out. Okay, so this is what it's going to look like when you're done. Then I'm cutting off this area. So at this point here, you can decide to use these allowances you have here as your seam allowance. Okay, remember we do not put normal seam allowance. What we were doing was the measurements we removed, that intake we removed, we added it back. So now I'm going to be using this as my seam allowance. So I have 2 inches here. which is okay. I'm going to come to my under bust. I'm also going to add 2 inches. Please note you can use more than 2 inches. At this area, I'll add 2 inches. So this is where we're going to be having a shortage. So I have about 1 inch here. So I'm going to be adding an extra fabric here to complete it to what I want. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it. Let me place these ones aside so you will not be confused. And this is what we have. Okay. So this is what our corset is going to look like. Now we're going to go ahead and transfer this to our fabric. See you in the next tutorial.